2023 was a difficult year for Marvel. Sure, Guardians 3 was a huge hit critically and financially, and Loki Season 2 was strong, but beyond that, I don't know, you got The Marvels, which wasn't terrible, but was Marvel's first genuine bomb. Then Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania was a big, mockable mess, but hey, at least it introduced a big, new, memorable villain. Never mind. And then there was what I genuinely believe is the overall worst thing the MCU has ever produced, Secret Invasion. Just an absolute disaster, filled with baffling deaths, pointless reveals, and at the heart of it, just all kinds of awful messaging. So Marvel took 2024 slow. It turned out to be one of their best years since Endgame, with Echo, X-Men 97, Deadpool and Wolverine, and Agatha all along. That was the easy part. Marvel is now staring down the barrel of 2025, which promises to be its biggest year in ever, really. 3 movies, 4 shows, a bunch of other things. And as the internet's favorite Marvel show, I want to take a video just to talk through it, set some expectations, for fun. But before we get to 2025, 2024 has one more thing that's worth talking about. And I bet a bunch of you are saying, wait, they made a What If Season 2? They certainly did. It released around Christmas of 2023, and it was surprisingly good. As someone who is not a humongous fan of Season 1, I think Season 2 is a huge improvement. And no, it is not only because Justin Hammer showed up to do a Die Hard homage and it was great, although I love that. No, it was just, I feel, a stronger interrogation of the premise of What If. Episodes with actual pitches, like what if Thor Ragnarok happened but with Iron Man instead of Thor, which was originally planned to be a Season 1 episode, or what if Nebula was a Nova Corpsman, or what if Hela found the 10 rings, what if the Avengers assembled in the 80s. They even used Captain Carter to do a what if Steve was the Winter Soldier episode that managed to work the Black Widow mythology into his backstory, and they introduced Gowry, the original Mohawk character with the power of an Infinity Stone. Sure, the ending of the season goes a little off the rails, but at least I think it does so in a fun way. And the stories drew from genres like neo-noir and 80s action comedy and were inspired by connections between characters like alcoholism or warriors from a hidden world looking for a family or supporting characters who never got a shot at the prime time. So Season 2 was fun. Season 3 looks pretty promising as well. Between this and something else which we'll get to, it seems like the animated material is going to be drawing largely on the characters from phases 4 and 5, which is nice because most of them haven't gotten more than one big appearance. I think a lot of what made phases 1, 2, and 3 special was the small connections. Falcon, for example, shows up in how many projects in his first few years? He debuts in Cap 2, he has a cameo in Age of Ultron, he has a bigger cameo in Ant-Man, and then he's a main player in Cap 3. Compare that to Kamala Khan, a thoroughly popular character, but one who, since her debut in 2022, has only made it into her own show and The Marvels. If this was Phase 2, she'd have been in 2 other shows by now and an Avengers movie. And yes, corrections, Jackals, I know she was also in the cruise ship movie thing, but I'm not counting it because I hate cruise ships. We've already seen bits of one episode with Red Guardian going on some sort of road trip with the Winter Soldier. It also looks like we're getting a mech episode and more Shang-Chi and apparently more Agatha. If I could make one plea to Marvel, don't do the daily releases. Do 2 episodes a week. 1 a day is impossible for me and my fellow YouTubers to cover, and it makes the whole thing difficult for people to digest, and once a show hits the backlog, it tends to stay there. There's still time to fix this, Marvel, but okay, so that brings us to 2025, which starts with a very different cartoon. Now, most of what I've seen for this one comes secondhand, courtesy of footage of D23, but the new sizzle reel showed a few seconds, and I'm kind of optimistic. Do I find the new art style a little much? Yeah, but you know what? They're clearly going for something, and I respect that. And I enjoy the comic panels. I just think the colors might lose me. I like the inclusion of comic characters, like the Runaways and Midnight Suns' Nico Minoru, and I adore the Coleman Domingo Norman Osborn casting. I wouldn't mind seeing that crossover into the MCU. I think the new costume is fun. Seems like there will be quite a few costumes in the show. I also think that guy he hit in the head with a brick better be a super soldier, because that's the kind of hit that can kill you, especially if it's so strong that it breaks the brick. Looks like Spider-Man's gonna need a really good lawyer again, which we'll get to. But first... Now listen, I'm quite worried about this one. For those of you out of the loop, Captain America Brave New World, or New World Order, as it was originally called, has apparently been reshot. A lot. Now I will be the first to say, reshoots, and even day of rewrites, are not always a bad thing. Many of everyone's favorite Marvel things involve reshot plot points that are so consequential, you would have to assume they've been there the whole time. But when done well, reshoots and rewrites can make a movie better. But also sometimes, a movie is bad, it scores poorly in test screenings, and it is reshot a lot, leading to a movie that is also bad, but maybe different. Like Madam Web got reshot a lot, and I don't think they fixed it. Sometimes reshoots are not enough. And I am worried about Brave New World. On vibes, I think the trailer's strong. In fact, many people who have seen this trailer that was released at D23 in Brazil agreed that the movie looks cool. I think this comes down to some very effective editing and slick-looking action scenes. I am very excited for the visuals of Sam buzzing around aircraft carriers on the big screen. I think that looked great in Falcon and Winter Soldier. But also, it sort of seems like Brave New World is going for the style of Winter Soldier without the human connection that made that story work. Without Bucky, Cap v Hydra can be entertaining, but the personal stakes making everything so much more complicated are why people look back on that movie so fondly. This is not a preemptive review of Brave New World. I just want to throw it out there that 2025 might start the same way as 2023, with a big, expensive movie that's okay. And I just know that if that happens, which I'm not guaranteeing it will, but if it does, there will be endless film bloggers using this moment to proclaim that Marvel is cooked. It's over. And I think, A, that is a wild take in the wake of Deadpool and Wolverine and Agatha all along, but B, it's February, and I've got a feeling the real winners are coming later. So judge slowly. Alright, back to The Very Good Lawyer. Alright, let's talk about everyone's second favorite, Matt. My actual first name is Matt. Nando is a nickname, it's a long story. Anyway, Daredevil Born Again is many people's most anticipated Marvel thing of 2025, and for that same reason, it is the one that most scares us. Season 3 of Netflix's Daredevil is phenomenal. As close to a perfect season of television as Marvel anything has produced. And many fans, myself included, were happy to leave the series behind. Sure, Matt was coming to the MCU, but he could do what he's been doing so far, popping up in She-Hulk and Spider-Man with maybe a bigger role in Spider-Man 4 or a Defenders show, which would be a good idea since they never made one of those. It's a common misconception, but Iron Fist and Netflix's Defenders and, let's say, Jessica Jones Season 2 are all some sort of Mandela effect situation where we think they happened and even vaguely remember plot details, and it's even playing on screen right now, but it actually never happened. But it's no surprise that Disney thought it would be a great storytelling and also money-telling opportunity to bring back The Man Without Fear for a 4th season. But apparently, that was as far as the thinking went, because according to reports, the original Daredevil Born Again, much of which was fully shot, stunk. Matt barely wore the costume, many of the supporting characters were not involved, and the story just didn't have the juice to justify calling Matt out of retirement for one more big score. But then, something amazing happened. Marvel learned something. Like that TV shows have showrunners who oversee production, and TV shows aren't just big 4-hour-long movies chopped into 6 pieces. So they took Daredevil Born Again back to formula. And it certainly seems like they've got something different on their hands. Pretty much every significant friend of Daredevil's is back. And some fun frenemies, and even an arch nemesis or two. It seems like the story is going to feature the trial of a vigilante, something that shockingly never happened in the first 3 seasons. Sure, Punisher took the stands, but he immediately went to prison, so he didn't get to do any of the fun court stuff. Then we're seeing an adaptation of Muse, one of the newer Daredevil villains who has a recognizable look and gimmick, but a very vague backstory in the comics, which gives the team the opportunity to take some fun liberties. So fingers crossed. Everybody's where they need to be. I just pray that Marvel is able to get this right. Speaking of things Marvel's taken a couple of swings at, let's talk about... I've got one word for you. Beef. One of 2023's most interesting and awarded new Netflix series was a comedy drama called Beef. If you never saw it, Beef is about 2 people who have a somewhat dramatic road rage incident that becomes the catalyst for their complete and total unraveling. Focuses on how a lack of or perceived lack of control is able to eat away at all of us and our relationships. So I was thrilled when I heard that Lee Sung-jin, the writer and director behind Beef, was taking another shot at the script for Thunderbolts. Because originally, I was skeptical. This Thunderbolts squad that in the comics is made up of colorful villains with wildly different superpowers is instead just going to be super soldiers and Black Widows. It's repetitive. It's dull. It's downright boring. Not you, Ghost, you're great, but no Red Hulk, no Zemo, just the sidekicks of Black Widow and Falcon. And Ghost, who again is doing great. I wondered, why this team? What makes them so special? And the writers not only seem to understand that, they made it the main character's defining flaw. They're spinning their wheels. In world of multiverses and secret dragons and giant Egyptian god avatars, what are they worth? What purpose do they serve? And like the protagonists of Beef, our Thunderbolts believe they have no control over their lives. They're being led into these Black Ops missions that don't leave them so full or so filled. That trailer opening with Yelena's monologue.
There is something wrong with me. An emptiness. I'm just drifting and I don't have purpose. I thought throwing myself into work was the answer.
It is the most relatable a superhero movie has sounded in a decade. Couple that with an absolutely stacked roster of fan-favorite MCU characters like Florence Pugh's Yelena, Sebastian Stan's Bucky, David Harbour's Alexei, Wyatt Russell's Walker, and of course Hannah John Kamen's Ghost, who is for a third time doing great. Taskmaster is also there. Then throw in Julia Louis-Dreyfus as a slightly less evil Selena Meyer, and whatever they're doing with the Sentry. I think this one could really deliver. So that's the end of Phase 5. And it seems like Marvel wants Fantastic Four First Steps to be the start of Phase 6. But that leaves one thing. In 2023, Disney made some changes. Sensing a public distaste for 5 shows and 3 movies a year, they pulled back, scaled down, retooled a bunch of projects like Daredevil and Thunderbolts. And they were careful not to overwhelm audiences, so they spaced things out, gave them room to breathe. And it sort of seems like one show got lost in the shuffle, Ironheart, because there was just never a great time for it. So it seems like Marvel settled on mid-2025, since this thing has to get released eventually, which means people online got the sense that Marvel was dumping it, getting it off the slate so they could focus on other things. I mean, if they were excited about it, why weren't they in a rush to get it out? And that may be the case, but the trailer kinda worked on me. And no, I'm not talking about the 5 seconds Ironheart got in the Look Ahead trailer, although it did have some strong visuals that we haven't seen before. But the leaked D23 trailer told more of a story. It introduces a Riri who, after being kicked out of MIT, joins up with some sort of crew that does heists led by Anthony Ramos's Parker Robbins, who in this goes by the Hood, but it probably makes more sense here because he's either doing this for the neighborhood or he's doing this as a Robin Hood thing. It always bugged me because the usual Hood in the comics is named after the hood he is wearing, except it is not a hood. It's a cloak. But there's already a guy named Cloak, so they made this guy Hood. It's a stupid name. Anyway, heists are cool. I also think the Ironheart suit looks great. People have complained for a while about how the recent nanomachine suits look fake. But because Riri has to start at square one and she can't just 3D print the suits, it seems like creating them and maintaining them is going to make these suits feel a lot more real. And the suit up shots look great. Is this the project I'm most looking forward to? Definitely not. But could be fun. It doesn't need to either, but could be. But you know what needs to be fun? Really fun. Fantastic Four First Steps needs to be an absolute grand slam in a bunch of ways. 2 important ones. It needs to be a better representation of these characters than we have seen on screen before, and it needs to showcase a fresh side of what the Marvel Cinematic Universe can be. Fortunately for the first family, I think these are achievable goals. First off, let's look at the better representation of these characters. We don't know a lot about their personalities, but what we can read from their designs suggests they're going as close to the comics as possible. I loved Michael Chiklis' Thing as much as the next guy, but he looked like a guy in a big rubber suit. No shade, they worked with what they had. But if the live-action Thing looks anything like the design in this piece of promotional art, this will easily be the most physically faithful version of the character to date, and that bodes incredibly well for the rest of the family and their rogues gallery. But put looks aside for a second, the Fantastic Four can be deep characters. And again, no shade on Ioan Gruffudd or Jessica Alba, but the cast of this thing is perhaps the strongest of any Marvel film. They're all pretty much breakout stars. You've got a Reed and Pedro Pascal coming off an award-nominated performance as Last of Us's Joel, then Pieces of a Woman's Vanessa Kirby as Sue, Stranger Things' Season 4 and Gladiator 2's Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, and then the Bears have been Moss Bacharach as The Thing. And they're joined by Ralph Ineson, Julia Gardner, Natasha Lyonne, Paul Walter Hauser, and John Malkovich. I saw someone say it before, but it's true. If this was the cast of an A24 movie, people would be losing their mind. So between fantastic visuals and inspired casting, this group has so much potential to bring a version of these four to the screen that captures everything comic fans love about the characters. But then how are they doing something new? Well, the story is set in an alternate universe that's some sort of 1960s retro future tech utopia, and that story is being crafted by an admittedly large team. It's written by, among others, Avatar 2 and Kingdom for the Planet of the Apes' Josh Friedman, Transformers 1 and Thor Ragnarok's Eric Pearson, and Carnival Row and WandaVision's Peter Cameron. This is a team of writers capable of inventing or expanding upon exciting new worlds and societies, and they are being directed by WandaVision's Matt Shakman. These are projects with impeccable production design, and couldn't make this feel like something we've never seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe before, the same way that Ragnarok and WandaVision were breaths of fresh air. The leaked D23 trailer seemed to serve largely to showcase the Fantastic Four's new world by taking these familiar TV settings like a documentary and a dating game and a kids' TV show and using them to contextualize these characters, have them fill familiar archetypes. I think that's really clever. If this goes right, Fantastic Four First Steps could be Marvel's next Guardians of the Galaxy or Black Panther type hit, one that opens up a new corner of the universe and attracts creatives who wouldn't otherwise have any interest in these movies. And the great thing about the Fantastic Four is there is so much ground yet to cover compared to everything in Marvel besides the X-Men. Take those other two I just mentioned. According to the Marvel Fan and Wiki, which is really good about this stuff, Rocket Raccoon has the most comic appearances of any OG Guardian with 423. T'Challa has 1,234 comic appearances. The Thing has 2,370. There are a lot of Fantastic Four stories left to tell. Speaking of T'Challa, before I started writing this video, I didn't really know what Eyes of Wakanda was. And that's because 1, it's not really based off any specific comic, and 2, Marvel's been pretty tight-lipped on this one. Here's what we know. It's 4 episodes, produced by Ryan Coogler, although not that other thing he seemed to be working on, which was an Okoye spinoff or something. Who knows what happened to that? It's created by Todd Harris, an artist who has worked on many Marvel storyboards, including for both Black Panthers and even the Wakanda Voices comic. It's an animated anthology set in the past that seems to chronicle the adventures of historical Black Panthers we have otherwise not yet met. It's 4 issues, we've seen a tiny bit, and it looks completely different from the What If style and the X-Men 97 and the Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man styles. We don't know which Black Panthers will show up. Apparently there's a new character named Nori in there somewhere, and also, alleged spoilers, an Iron Fist will show up in at least one episode, but not Danny Rand. It looks very cool, and while I wish it had at least a full 8-episode season, this feels like the kind of passion project that people will get excited about once they see more, and then who knows, maybe a second season will be bigger. Speaking of excitement leading to longer seasons, let's talk about a spin-off from What If Season 1. In 2025, Marvel is continuing its somewhat consistent tradition of releasing spooky Disney Plus stuff around Halloween. This started in 2022 with Werewolf by Night and continued this year with Agatha All Along. And in Halloween 2025, we're getting an entire series of Marvel zombies. Alright, entire series is a bit generous since it's also only 4 episodes, but still better than nothing. Since this one is also quite late in the year, we don't know much, but we do have some promotional art that gives us a sense for which characters are involved. And like What If Season 3, it's the Phase 4 and 5ers. One thing that some people, myself included, are very excited about, this is one of the few 2025 projects with some Eternals. We've got Icarus confirmed and probably others. We've also got Kingo showing up in What If, and I wouldn't be shocked if the MCU's most famous Bollywood star also had something to do with the last Marvel project of 2025, which we'll get to. Another fun thing about zombies, it's R-rated, so that's neat. Probably gonna mostly be characters getting ripped limb from limb, but I wouldn't mind an F-bomb or two. And this does continue the story that began in the What If Zombies episode from Season 1, so we're starting with most of the Avengers gone, a zombified Thanos, and still no Thor. I feel like this and What If are really pushing the MCU forward past Endgame. Spending more time with alternate versions of these new characters will make the real ones feel like staples of the universe, as important as Captain America or Iron Man, and that's what's going to keep the MCU fresh. Also, Blade is debuting in Marvel Zombies, but as Moon Knight, because that's where we are with Blade right now. And that leaves one big project to finish out 2025. Closing out the year, I have really high hopes for Wonder Man. For people who are not familiar, in the comics, Simon Williams is a trust fund kid who gets incredible ionic superpowers, but then dies and comes back to life a bunch. He's usually an Avenger, and he's been in relationships with Carol and Wanda. He hangs out with Beast, but what he is probably mostly known for is taking a break from avenging and becoming an actor. And that idea seems to be the pitch behind the Wonder Man series that's showing up at the end of 2025. Simon Williams is an actor who seems to be trying to get the role of Wonder Man in some sort of movie. Whether he has superpowers at this point has yet to be seen, but I can see it working both ways. Either he has the powers and is trying to cash in on them and needs to learn to use his powers for good or something, or maybe Simon lies on his resume to make it seem like he has superpowers so he gets the part of a superpowered character. I'm not sure how that lie would work, like maybe based on some misunderstood public display. People think he has superpowers and he just goes with it and uses it to get ahead in Hollywood. Think Chicken Run or Rango or Road to El Dorado. Or it could be something completely different. Either way, I think Marvel is pretty strong when it comes to comedy, and they've got Andrew Guest, one of the writers behind some episodes of 30 Rock, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and Community working on this one. And Guest did not just write any Community episode, he wrote, among others, Fistful of Paintballs and Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. And this is an area of the MCU I am really curious about. What is entertainment like in a universe full of actual superheroes? We've seen it in the background, like the movies that everybody's watching on the plane in Spider-Man Far From Home or the Steve Rogers musical. It is my favorite kind of world building, the stuff that The Boys does so well. So I want to see Marvel's take on it. And then the cast for this one, we've got basically live action superhero Yahya Abdul-Mateen II as Simon. Then Ben Kingsley's back as Trevor Slattery, who appears to be Simon's acting coach. Ed Harris is playing Simon's agent, and then Demetrius Gross is Simon's brother Eric, who becomes a supervillain eventually. Listen, there's no guarantee this one is good, but I've been really hoping for something in the vein of She-Hulk, and this feels as close as we're gonna get. Plus, once he's introduced, Simon can play a lot of roles that he usually does in the comics. He's the Avengers pacifist, he's Vision's brain twin, and he's a founding member of the West Coast Avengers, a team that's shaping up nicely over the last few years. So what does all this mean? I don't know. While there are some movies and shows that it sure would be nice if they worked, there are a few that absolutely need to for this saga to be a success. Fantastic Four First Steps and Daredevil Born Again specifically have a lot riding on their shoulders. Thunderbolts and Wonder Man look like they could be fun surprises, and if the rest are good, that's a nice bonus. So I guess what this really means is you're going to have a lot of stuff to watch in 2025. And a lot of it is going to be streaming. So you want to make sure that your internet connection is safe, but also fast. And that is where this video sponsor NordVPN comes in. I've been using NordVPN for years. Like, when I say I've been using it for years, it has been on in the background constantly. When I uploaded this video and all the other videos I've made in the last couple of years, all have been when NordVPN is on. And you never notice it. In independent speed tests, NordVPN has beat out every one of its major competitors. So if you've ever been like, oh, I wish I had better data security, but I'm worried about the internet speed, you shouldn't be. NordVPN has super strong encryption. You can use its over 5,600 servers in 59 countries to check out geo-blocked sites when you travel, especially if you're going to do stuff like connect to coffee shop Wi-Fi. There's also threat protection. It's another optional level of security that blocks anti-malware and intrusive ads and trackers. And at least before I started using NordVPN, when I thought about these, I always figured it was something you had to use on your computer, but no. The traditional NordVPN plan lets you install on up to 6 devices, and that includes your phone. So you're browsing securely everywhere you go. And if you use my link that's on screen now, you get a massive discount of their 2-year plan. And on top of that, 4 months free. And NordVPN offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it out and make sure you love it risk-free. Again, use my link that's on screen now for a huge discount of their 2-year plan and 4 months free. And of course, I have to thank everybody who continues to support the channel on Patreon, everybody who watches these videos early and ad-free on Nebula, everybody that listens to my podcast, mostly Nitpicking, and everybody that follows me on Twitter and all the social networks. I'm at NandoVMovies, wherever you can find me. That's all I got. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.